Wow, I hope you enjoyed the special preview episode of New Amsterdam. Now, please join me in welcoming our moderator to the stage, Entertainment Weekly's Brittany Kaplan.
All right. Hi, guys. How are ya? Welcome. That was quite an episode, right? All right, so first I'd like you to welcome creator and executive producer David Schulner. And next up, we have our lovely star, I can't talk because I just ran through that marathon, Tyler Labine. Come on over. So first of all, I'd like to thank you and everyone here for braving the marathon trials. I don't know how many of you made it through and any of you who ran today, but we all had the same experience getting through, so I think we qualified. Well, you know, there's certainly a lot going on in that episode, and it ended with almost a little bit of wish fulfillment there. So are we going to see any changes here at the end of this season as we head to the end?
Can you be more specific?
Well, I mean, I think we all want to see Max and Sharp get together at some point.
Really?
I think so.
Who?
I think
Who
we've
does?
waited. I think the general consensus there is that we like to see that happen.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
It's a long burn.
It's a very they have a very complicated relationship. So I feel like we're very conscious to acknowledge where they've both been and what would need to happen for them to move forward.
All right.
So,
I'll let you off the hook.
If it's any consolation, I asked him the same question point blank in the car right over here. He doesn't even tell me, so.
Okay, that's fair. I'll let you off then. All right, so I want to welcome you all back, first of all. We were so thrilled to have you last year when you got the Cast Award, so thank you for making the trip back.
Glad to be here.
Good.
We get the award again?
Sadly, you know, we don't have another award, but
That's okay.
we're awarding you with the Favorite People Award.
It makes it more special that there is no more of them being produced. It's
There
very
you go.
exclusive, yeah.
That's it. So we're very happy to have you in Atlanta and here on this very difficult travel weekend, so thank you. I wanted to take a step back, though, and I wanted to have you set the scene a little bit, David, and talk about, you know, back in the beginning, there was a bidding war over the book and that the show is based on. I don't know how many of you guys know that the show is based on a book. And, you know, when you guys premiered, you blew everybody out of the water. There's my little accent coming in with the water. But you really did. The competition was just thrown by how successful you were. Talk to us a little bit about how you won the bidding war and why it was so important to you to have this show.
So after the 2016 presidential election, I told Universal I only wanted to write about immigration or healthcare. And they naturally looked at me like I was crazy and was not going to make them any money. But I found two books. And one of them was 12 Patients, Life and Death at Bellevue Hospital. And it was about the medical director of Bellevue who was diagnosed with cancer while he was the medical director. But it was also about why patients ended up in the hospital. It was less about the medical interventions while they were there, but what social and political issues caused people to get sick. And that was, for me, the most interesting part of the book. And that's what the author, Dr. Mannheimer, wanted to make sure that would be a part of the series.
And we had a chance to talk a little bit earlier this week, and one of the things that you told me that I didn't know, and I'm a huge fan of the show, and I've had a chance to talk to you guys before and learn a little bit about it, but one thing I didn't know is that you shoot at Bellevue, which I did know, full disclaimer, but I didn't know that you shoot on, fill in the blanks for me, you shoot one day a week.
So we shoot one day a month at Bellevue on a Sunday, and we try to get as many episodes. We use that gorgeous atrium, is Bellevue Hospital. And so we try to get our scripts written very far in advance so we can shoot at least one scene from 4 different episodes on one day. So you'll have 4 different directors It'll be the same talk about it, what it's like.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm really
It's
curious about as an
miserable.
actor.
It's a miserable way to do it, but it's the only way to do it because Bellevue is an active hospital, and we are more than a pain in the ass to be there. Have a film crew inside of an active hospital, a public hospital, and yeah, it's on Sunday. It's on a Sunday once a month. Nobody wants to be there, but you know we do it anyway because we love this guy, and we love the show.
But you're doing scenes from 4 different
Yeah,
episodes.
so chronologically, it's all over the place. Like you can be doing scenes from. You might only be there to do 2 scenes that day, but usually if you're Ryan, you're there to do at least the bulk of the day, and it could be anywhere from 3 to 4 episodes, and it gets confusing. You don't know exactly which timeline you're in, and where you were emotionally, but that's why we have the directors there.
And you have different directors, correct?
Yeah,
So as an
so
actor,
there's-
how does that work?
It doesn't really. I mean, it's not a great system, honestly. I don't know what to say. It's the only way to do it because we need that beautiful location, but it's not ideal for anybody for the process. I'm just being honest because this is an intimate gathering. I feel like we're all friends here. Yeah, David, we don't like it.
How can we fix that? Help us help you.
No, I get that it's a necessity, and that's our job. We show up. The directors are there. We can lean on them if we have questions. We always have a producer nearby, and that's our job. We're paid to do whatever they want us to do, so we do it.
So speaking of coming back to the beginning, I have to be honest, Iggy's my favorite character.
All right.
What attracted you to this character? Because he is so
The name.
nuanced and so complex. I love everything about him.
Well, it's funny. My initial reaction to, even before I read the script, was that I didn't want to do a medical drama. I actually passed before I even read it. Just even on meeting with these guys, I was like, it was the beginning of pilot season. It was the first pilot that they sent to me, and I just was like, I don't like medical dramas. I don't want to do that. And then I read it, and it really floored me because it was just something very different. Almost inexplicably different. I couldn't quite put my finger on why it was so different, but it felt real and it felt important. And I was at a place in my career where I didn't want to do, I don't know if anybody knows any of my work prior to this show, but I mostly just do comedy. And even beyond that, one step further, I do like gross out, lowbrow comedy. So, doing a really conscientious and well thought out drama like this was, after I read it a couple times, I was like, what a dream. And Iggy also has these very bright moments of levity, and there's a lot of truth in that, I think. I feel like in any dramatic situation, there is always some levity. And I feel like any good drama has to have that. And I thought, well, man, I could do that. I can be, maybe it'll be a good transition for me. I can be kind of funny, but also sort of plumb the depths a bit and pull out these dramatic things that I think I've always had kind of living inside me. And these guys gave me the opportunity to do that, and it's been really. But that's what drew me to it, was the potential for where this character could go. Because initially he was sort of sloppy. I think he sat in a bagel with cream cheese on it, and his desk was a mess. And I met with these guys, and I said, that's the only thing I don't like, is that I don't want to play another boob. I don't want to play another guy who's just kind of like, ooh. And David was like, well, I wrote the character based on myself. I was like, oh.
And then,
I love it. I love it.
then do you remember when we got to set, I don't know if you remember, but you were like, I feel like paper should be falling out of my book bag.
Yeah. My default instinct kicked back in. I was like, more sloppy, messier. But it was only so I could put my butt in Peter Horton's face. That was the whole reason I wanted to do that. But no, it's really, I know this is a long-winded answer. It's been really amazing to feel a hunch about something, and after meeting with Peter and David and David's wife Liz, who cast me in it, I had that feeling. I had a hunch that there was something really special, but you never know. And I didn't know what was in store for Iggy, and it's been so much more than I ever could have hoped for. And there's even more coming, and I hope you guys are enjoying the struggle that Iggy is going through right now, because it's very personal and it's been really fun, and these guys are doing a heck of a job writing it. So yeah, it's turned out to be just a magical journey for me.
I think one of my favorite things about the show is that, and what's so beautiful about it is that there's diversity of character, and there's diversity within the characters in all aspects of their lives. But there is nothing about this that is story of the week. It is just what they are, what they live, what is true, and it is just life. And I think that's so beautifully done. And I was curious, was that on the page? Was that something that you brought to it?
Yeah, I mean, what I always tell people, I think is really special about this show, and yes, you can make an argument that it's pretty liberal and it's pretty left, but I feel like it's really a spotlight. It kind of just shows you here, this is going on, and doesn't totally manipulate you and how you should feel about it, which I really appreciate, because there's a lot of manipulation out there. In our show, I think it's not like it's manipulation free, but there is very little in that regard. I feel like it shows you these very real life things that are happening, and within the healthcare system specifically, and just says, here, look at that. And then you feel how you feel about it, talk to who you want to talk to about it, but really just begs people to look at it. I think that was on the page. That's always been there. I think that's a bit of David's whole mission statement is
But I think it's
illumination.
And it also comes from the writers. Our whole staff, I have a whole wall of ideas that I'm really passionate about, and the writers totally ignore that wall. I'm like, guys, these ideas are really good, and they're like, yeah, okay. And then they send me the ideas that they're passionate about. Yeah. And because I have a really diverse staff in all
the room is unbelievable.
gender, everything, and across the spectrum, that's how you get rich, different stories, great stories.
And Iggy wasn't originally written as being gay, right?
Well, I don't know if, unbeknownst to me,
Yeah.
yeah. So I accepted the role, and I guess the day after our table read, we had come to do rehearsals and do some fittings. And it's really funny because I'd been thinking to myself, I wonder if they'd have a problem if we made Iggy like asexual or gay or something. I just had this hunch about him that I wanted something more, and something extra.
But do you remember how it all came to be?
Yeah. Dave, so we were done with the table read, and David and Peter said, "Hey, I just was wondering what your thoughts would be if we wanted to make Iggy gay," and I was just like, "Yeah, I actually."
But I always thought he was.
Yeah,
It was never mentioned explicitly in the pilot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until our props department came and said, "So is Iggy wearing a wedding band?"
Oh yeah, that's
Remember
right.
that?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
said, "Yes, he is."
Yeah, he's married and he's got 4 adoptive children.
Yeah.
And then then we kind of put it all together, and I was like, oh wow.
But we were both feeling the same thing from the character on the page.
Yeah, there was just something there that I thought could be a really good platform to explore, and I think what's been my pleasure in playing a gay character is that it's such an important time right now for just to normalize. You know what I mean? Just it's the world that we see. Why isn't it reflected in pop culture? Why isn't it reflected the way we see it, And I think we're really trying to do that with this show, and specifically in the regard that it was like, it's not the thing we hang the hat on for him.
Right.
It's not like, oh, here's the gay character on the show. In fact, we didn't even mention it until episode 5. And even then when we did, it was just very matter of fact, and we just baked it in. It was already baked in the cake, and it's just there. And I think that's what was so cool about the way that this character became three-dimensional,
I think it's something you guys do across the board, and I think you do it beautifully. I love that. And speaking of all of the things that you weave in so well, I think that unless I really missed it, which I think I did, you have been weaving these moments leading up to Iggy's eating disorder in from episode 1. And I think...
we didn't know it.
I mean...
Do you remember the...
Yeah, Dave, well, I think I know where you're going with this. It was already kind of there. And I think before we even knew that it was a thing...
Do you remember what your first lines in the pilot are?
In the pilot, I remember the stuff about the cupcakes where I say I lie about eating
Well, in the
2 of the cupcakes.
Yeah, but your very first lines are, Max is like, "What do you guys want to change?"
Oh, I want food. I want healthy food.
food.
Yeah, and then there were scenes cut out where I was eating crudité in the pilot, and then there were a couple of chocolate scenes.
Well, the whole pilot, Iggy's eating celery, carrots,
yeah.
and then his case falls through, and he's
Binge
eating chocolate.
Yeah, and it's funny. I
pilot.
didn't even really remember it that way.
It was never commented on.
No, and it sort of happened throughout the season, very honestly, because I like to have business as an actor, and I'd be like, I asked David a couple times, can we bring back the celery and carrots? And sometimes they would have it. Sometimes on set they'd be like, no, but we have these like energy bars. We can make them look like a chocolate bar. I'd be like, cool, let's do that. And it just created this very inconsistent eating behavior with Iggy, which was born out of a very real place for me because of my need to sort of have stuff to do in scenes. And then they started writing more in. And then David finally came to me at the onset of season 2, right? Was it the beginning?
Yeah.
No, it was early in the season. You said, hey, we're thinking about kind of taking this eating thing and making some of the behaviors more pronounced and maybe turning it into a bit of an eating disorder for Iggy. And my knee-jerk reaction was, don't do that unless you're going to do it for real.
Right.
Because I've struggled with my own disordered eating and body dysmorphia. And then these guys, which is true across the board, they took a genuine interest in where my struggle actually was as Tyler Labine, and gave me the opportunity to tell them my story, and we've sort of weaved in a bunch of stuff from my life and stuff that the storyline they wanted to tell with Iggy. So it's a very personal storyline for me. And we have an episode coming up, 218, where it really comes to a head. And it was, it's really painful stuff. But I think it's important. That's another thing this show does is like it's giving me a platform to represent men with eating disorders.
Yeah.
You know, I'll say it. It's just not a thing that we see or that we talk about. But it's very real, you know.
Well, I think it's important to point out that, and these are stats straight from the National Eating Disorders Association, that 1 in 3 people who deal with eating disorders, I'm just looking down because I want to make sure I get this right. So 1 in 3 people who deal with eating disorders are men. That means 10 million men, that's million, struggle with some form of eating disorders with their lifetime. Those are clinically classed eating disorders. If you open that up to things that are a little less classified, like disordered eating, that's roughly half of the people who deal with eating disorders.
Yeah, I have both. I have
disordered eating.
actual diagnosed body dysmorphia and disordered eating, which is like a lot of people don't even know about disordered eating, but that's like,
Right.
I think a lot of people, especially from my generation, really struggle with that.
And in the writer's room too, all of a sudden people were like, I have issues. I have issues. Like
I have issues.
It all came out from everyone.
It leads to my next question, which is, I think we're all contemporaries here, or similar generations, and as someone who has struggled with eating disorders myself since I was a child, growing up in the 80s and 90s, the only real reflections I think that we saw in the media were, you know, Karen Carpenter or Tracy Gold. I remember a very distinct after-school special that was shown in, I think, every class, where she would keep like glass vials of vomit in her room. And if you didn't reflect that way, and if you were not if you didn't weigh 70 pounds or 80 pounds, or that wasn't what you did, you didn't know that's what you had, or you didn't think that's what you had.
Yeah.
So if you had binge eating disorder, or if you had bulimia, but you were still a normal size or a bigger size, you didn't think that something was wrong, or you thought you were failing or doing it wrong. So I'm curious how you came to show these eating disorders. I know we talked about tasting, we talked about some of these other things, and why that was important to you. Because I think it's so important. You have such a platform, and you're on this very successful primetime show, and I applaud you for this.
Why else are we here? I mean, I know to entertain that's our primary goal, but if you're not doing something else while you're entertaining an audience, then you're just wasting my time as an audience member, and I think as a creator, you're wasting your audience's time. We all have busy lives. I don't have time to just sit and be entertained without something deeper. That's just what I need as an audience member. So that's what the show does.
Someone said to me the other day that they should start programming content that you can watch simultaneously while you're on your phone. They were like genuinely frustrated. Like, I have to pay too much attention to the TV I watch when I really just want to be on my phone and sort of check in with the TV all the time. And I was like, no, that's not how you want it. Like, pay attention to one thing or another. And then I realized, like, oh, that is, a lot of material is that way. There's very substance light, if you want to be polite about it. And I feel like, yeah, David's right. And the only reason I think any of us are even really proud to be on this show is because it has something to say. Yeah, it's great to be an actor and you get to like be dramatic, but if there's nothing behind it, it just gets vapid real quick. And this show just doesn't seem to do that.
And there's just so many choices now. I mean, if you want to be
Yeah.
entertained, you complete,
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah, it's not, it's not lost on us that network TV is not the hippest thing in the world, like, so I think it's important. And I will say this about NBC, and I mean this, I know I work for them, but I mean, I feel like historically speaking, they have done things that other network have not been willing to do. And I think they're doing it now. I think they're taking a chance on a lot of content, including this show. And I think we're going to see a lot from them in the future of streaming as well. And like, I think that they're willing to take a gamble. I think that's really cool and rare in network.
But from ER to West Wing and
And their comedies. I mean, geez.
Yeah,
List
it's
goes
we've never gotten any kind of like, we don't want you to, like, we've had some very controversial episodes.
Yeah, you're.
And our notes are from NBC are, can you make sure that you're going deeper? So
awesome.
we're very lucky.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of deeper, let's talk a bit more about what this is going to look like. So we see the stressors. We've obviously seen this. We talked about narcissistic personality disorder, which I believe was a red herring.
Yeah. Yes.
We used narcissistic personality disorder to send Iggy
Right.
into
Into a spiral.
Okay.
Which is funny because it sent me personally into one a little bit because I immediately, this is a pretty narcissistic thing to say, I read that and I was like, is this written about me? Are they putting me on blast? I went and looked in the DSM-5 and sure enough, I tick like a lot of the boxes for NPD. I think we all do, just to be fair. But I definitely don't lack empathy and stuff like that. But I was like, oh my God, these dudes are laying into me. They're like picking me apart. And I had to like step back from it and be like, okay, that's insane.
It was, we weren't.
No,
we did title an episode for Ryan. It was called "Hiding Behind My Smile."
Oh yeah.
And because Ryan does that as Max.
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah.
I was like, Ryan's not going to let us get away with that. And he's like, bring it.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. Challenge accepted.
Yes.
So yeah, the stressors and the NPD and that episode with Mike Doyle and Adina Verson who played Tabitha, both are fantastic. And we've covered a lot of ground in that office. There's been a lot of tense scenes last year with me and Janet as Bloom, and it just kind of like, I think at that point when we shot episode 210, and
This is where Iggy's husband Martin finds out that
I was trying to adopt a child without telling him, which is insane.
You're gathering information.
I remember actually at one point talking to Erica Green, who is one of our writers. She just said, how do you feel about, this is early on, she said, how do you feel about Iggy trying to adopt a kid without telling Martin? And I was like, it's really bad, it's weird. And she looked at me and she was like, no, really? What does that say about Iggy? And I was like, it's really fucked up, actually. Like, the more I think about it, that's crazy. Like, if I did that to my wife, if I just, like, went and adopted a child, basically, and then, like, that's grounds for divorce.
You would have never have done it. You were gathering information.
Yeah, gathering information.
Yeah.
But
to make a case.
That was the first moment of me going, oh, they're going to take him apart. We're going to take Iggy apart, which is what I asked for. I went out for dinner with Aaron Ginsberg, one of our producers and writers on the show, also his best friend. I know everything I say to him will eventually get to David.
You also called me personally.
Yeah, true. That's true. He's a very open door kind of guy. But anyway, I had asked for Iggy to be pulled apart, and this is it.
There's having Tyler play this character is one of the things that makes this medical show unique from other medical shows. They don't deal with psych.
Mental health, yeah.
They don't deal with mental health issues.
Yeah.
So we have no shortage of stories for Iggy. And as a result, we leaned away from going into Iggy's personal life just because we had so many amazing stories to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, which was very rewarding in itself. I mean, last year we covered so much ground. And I also think it's like, just on that note, I think it's high time that we started including mental health under just the healthcare umbrella. Right. I don't know why it's stigmatized and why it has to be its own thing. Like, you're not mad at somebody for taking, medication for congenital heart disease, yet we stigmatize people who have to take, antidepressants. It's crazy to me. So, healthcare, right? Yeah, when I realized that we were going to take him apart this season, I was around episode like 3 or 4 when he was really moving forward with the adoption. And then when David approached me about the eating disorders, and I had the very guttural and knee-jerk reaction of like, no, that's too personal or too, I really didn't want to do it. I got really scared. It's not something I really want. I've spent a lot of years building up an image and a persona of like a big guy who doesn't care, or like we see it all the time. It's represented on TV all the time. Like women have to be rail thin, and then they're married to some schlub who's like, "Woo, me? I don't even notice this thing." And it's just not true. I feel like it's not an accurate depiction on either side of the fence. So, I again, as is with this show, I was like, "Yeah, it's scary, but it's a good reason to do it because you're scared. It feels a good reason to do it." So then, yeah, the stressors with the food and the eating and the tasting, which I actually used to do. I'll take it even one step further. I used to do what's called sniffing. Has anybody heard of that? It's where you take a piece of pizza and then you bite an apple instead of eating the pizza. And it's really bad, and it's very, very damaging, and it's not effective at all. You end up binging, which you always do. So anyway, we talked a lot about all these different so we added in some of those. And there are things that are building towards an even bigger climax for Iggy, where this stuff comes from somewhere, right? You don't just develop an eating disorder because you're. I also wanted to say what you were talking about with the representation through 80s and 90s. Unless you were like so thin that you were in danger of dying, being chubby or being fat was never considered an eating disorder or something that needed to be looked at. It was just shameful, and it was, oh, you eat too much and you're a pig and you need to, you need to fix your attitude towards food or whatever it was. It all comes from trauma. It all comes from damage. It all comes from things that we've had to live through, things that people have said to us, have done to us. There's also I believe that trauma is passed down genetically, and I think a lot of that trauma gets passed down to you, and you don't have a choice. It's not willpower. It's damage that's been done to you. And I really relish the opportunity to help get that message out there. And so that's sort of where I think this whole thing is leading, is not just that Iggy has quirky eating behavior. There's been some real offenses in his life, and he's dealt with some real trauma. So that's where we're kind of leading.
I want to open this up to questions for you guys, but I just have one final question, which is, how are you separating? How are you able to separate yourself?
At the moment, not very well. It's been.
You just finished.
I just finished shooting
the
sort of the climax of the head of this storyline, and like I said, I gave some very personal information to these guys that we put in the show, and right before we started shooting the episode, my mom decided to come visit me in New York, so she was staying with me while we were telling the story, about what they had sort of done to me. And she read the script. I left it out. I think subconsciously I left it out, and she read it while I was at work, and we had like a 3-hour talk that night. So I was shooting it and dealing with sort of repairing things with my mom, my dad.
On the same day.
On the same day. And then my dad will be, that's a whole nother can of worms, but it just, it's been lately, it was very, very close to home, but I'll say this, it has been one of the most cathartic, amazing weeks I've had in my life. I feel better than I have in years right now, and I actually went out and got like tattoos the other day to commemorate my parents, because through all this I realized how much I love them, and that we're all just flawed people, and that these things happen. And I have 3 kids, and God forbid, I know that I'm going to mess them up somehow, because we just do. So I have not been separating my art from my life very much at all. But it's felt really good, so I'm not gonna apologize for that.
And I need to applaud Tyler for being willing to put yourself out there for 10 million people.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's scary. Thanks. But hey, it's important, I think, right? What else are we doing here, right? Yeah.
Well, I want to open up to some questions. I think we have some people. No, do we not have time? Oh, we talk too much. I'm sorry.
Oh, whoops.
All right. Well, thank you.
You can find us
much.
on Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please tweet. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
you
you
guys
guys.
being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.